Who are these people?
You wanted to get to this, which I love this thumbnail. This is great. Like sad Biden. Oh, you
Oh
know,
God.
but
I don't think he really cares that much.
no,
Honestly.
no, we just said such a grumpy to your face. Oh.
But yeah, as we said, we're in 2024. This is election year. We're going to talk about elections as needed
Yeah.
for the next few months. I came across this article from Truthout. This is an op-ed written by Mike Ludwig, and he basically gives a report card for Biden, more or less. This is what it is.
Yep.
So he writes, 2023 was a bad year for Joe Biden. Voters are still upset about inflation, but it's the destruction of Gaza that can haunt Biden in 2024. So Mike continues.
This is the smallest violin I have. So you know. But anyway,
polls are not a crystal ball that show us the future. Democrats learned this the hard way in 2016 when an underperformance by Hillary Clinton and the anachronisms of the Electoral College helped to deliver a surprise victory for former President Donald Trump. However, the number crunchers at 538 combined data from dozens of polls to create a solid indicator of political trends, and the numbers aren't looking so good for President Joe Biden as we close out 2023. Biden's aggregate approval rating has slumped for much of the year and now hovers just below 40%, a few points lower than Trump's approval rating at this point in his presidency. Individual polls put Biden's approval rating as low as 34%, causing panic among Democrats and never-Trumpers alike as the 2024 elections approach. Hey,
come on, man.
Okay. Biden's aggregate disapproval rating grew by about 4 points over the course of 2023 to 55%, but individual polls can be much more dire. Last week, a nonpartisan Monmouth University poll found that an alarming 61% of likely voters disapprove of Biden's performance. If accurate, then nearly 2/3 of the nation is unhappy with the president. Meanwhile, Trump has once again effectively leveraged his presence in the media, turning a pile of criminal indictments against him and his allies into jet fuel for a re-election campaign that is so far smashing the competition in the GOP primaries. Anything could happen after voting begins in Iowa next month, but all indicators point to a Biden-Trump rematch in 2024. Recent polls suggest voters aren't happy with both options, but Trump is currently leading Biden in multiple swing states. The last year saw a widening gap between Biden's legislative and political achievements, at least on paper, and how voters view him. For Biden and his team, 2024 will be all about closing that gap or potentially facing defeat at the hands of an authoritarian reality TV star accused of a long list of crimes, including an alleged conspiracy to overthrow Biden's victory in 2020. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a second because even with this, because I think I've read Mike's articles before, and he's tended to do this before in terms of he will kind of almost overemphasize the GOP side. And I mean, he's doing it here in terms of, obviously this is about Biden, but this is still almost kind of like, oh, Trump is authoritarian, the most extreme in terms of the GOP.
Collin, you know what this is?
This is the most election of our lifetime.
It's the most election of our lifetime. So, come on, did you fall out of a coconut tree?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Well, over the weekend, there were several people on Twitter that called Biden, I think it was Bree Newsom actually, who called Biden a dictator. And given, I I think we did talk about this with Reef last week, Brett, sorry, that, Biden went behind Congress and initiated more weapons to Israel. So, I mean, going against what your party, at least your constituents want, and going over Congress in order to supply more weapons to Israel sounds like, authoritarian / dictator to me. But you see all the Trump stands kind of being like, going to bat, and basically being like, oh, Bree is like nothing but a child of God. So I just...
Well, and meanwhile, Trump wants to make a bigger FBI building. So,
right.
A lot of good that's going to do you.
But anyway, digress. To make matters worse for the president, 2023 saw a deluge of calls from across the political spectrum for Biden to step aside and allow a younger Democrat to run against Trump in 2024. For many of the step aside commentators, it doesn't matter whether ageism is weaponized against Biden, who's only a few years older than Trump, or that people who talk to pollsters appear unaware of the president's many legislative accomplishments.
Not just ageism.
Why did I pick this art?
I don't know. Like, we could talk shit about it either way. Like, it's the bro can barely stand. Like, and go back and listen to him. We're gonna do that later tonight. We're gonna go back and listen to him speak. He don't sound the same. Like, it's
no, compared to 8 years ago.
This is elder abuse. The dude's got dementia, and like Trump at least sounds coherent. I mean, he says nonsense, but he says it in a way that makes sense, versus like a random string of words and like literally turning to shake hands with ghosts. Like, that's anyway. Like,
yeah. Biden is simply unpopular, their thinking goes, and the risk Trump poses to the country is just too great for such a gamble. Why not bow out gracefully and become a hero for younger voters by passing the torch rather than dig in for another mudslinging fight with Trump?
To who? Kamala?
No, party's something like what's his face from California?
Newsom.
Yeah, Newsom.
Yep.
Who has been...
Knowing the Democrats, they'd probably choose someone like Nikki Haley at this point. So, like...
I got 141 and 2/3 chance of winning.
Yeah. Like...
There are zero indications that Biden will step aside, but he appears to be baffled by the poll numbers, as are his centrist supporters within the Democratic Party and the Never Trump camp. How could a president who passed historic pandemic relief and infrastructure legislation... Oh, God. Again, guys, I'm so sorry. I thought this article would sounded good, at least when I looked at it, and now reading it out loud, I'm just kind of like,
Yeah, no, it's I get, this is where the people are at in their heads. And it's okay. They'll figure it out. So,
how could a president who passed historical pandemic relief and infrastructure legislation despite a bitterly divided Congress be trailing in the polls to the likes of Trump?
I wonder.
For much of 2020... Okay, I think he's going to go into it. I think...
Yes.
I hope he's kind of being facetious for most of this, but for much of 2023, the conventional answer to this question was, is the economy stupid? According to this theory, Biden can point to macroeconomic improvements such as lowering unemployment rates, but voters still remember a time when prices for everything from groceries to a new home were lower.
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
So the theory goes, voters are punishing Biden as Republicans smear the president with misinformation any chance they get. And because I think last year, I wrote a tweet which for me went viral. I think I talked to you about it. I basically said, under Trump financially,
you did better.
I was doing a lot better.
You
know, even though I was making less money. And most people agreed with me. But then there were a few that were like, basically, how dare you say this? You know, like Trump is bad. Like there's no possible way. I'm like, look, I know my bank account. Like everything was a lot cheaper, at least when Trump was president. And I wasn't saying that to show like I like Trump. I was just making the call like we're under inflation right now. Yeah, I make more money now, but everything is a lot more expensive now than they were 3 years ago. So
look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
So, you know, at least right now I'm breaking even, you know, which I'm very privileged to say that. But I know other people who do not necessarily feel that same way. They're struggling right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's but yeah, like the fact that I said that, for a few people, they were just kind of like, you know, what Mike is saying here, like you're shit for basically saying that. Like there's no
Even
way
though
that
that's
Trump
what happened, you know.
Right.
Not to any fault of his own, let's be clear. But
no.
You know.
No. But yeah, this was pre-pandemic. So
right.
Anyway, inflation exists within the context of other economic problems, such as extreme wealth inequality and a widespread affordable housing crisis that Biden can't do much without sweeping legislation from Congress. Still, about 60% of the U.S. population reports living paycheck to paycheck, and pollsters say the Bidenomics messaging for the president's campaign is not clicking with the public.
No.
The Biden administration keeps tuning their infrastructure investments and a host of positive economic indicators, said Patrick Murray, director of the Monmouth University Polling Institute, in a statement. Those data points may be factual, but most Americans are still smarting from high prices caused by post-pandemic inflation. This seems to be what's driving public opinion.
Right. I love how this is like, it's like our marketing's not working. It's like, yeah, that's because it's marketing. Like,
right.
You haven't done anything. You know? Like, yeah, but we did this kind of stuff over here. It's like, no, you open the Arctic to drilling, you did more wars, you're committing a genocide, like, you have a giant checklist of cons right now. You know, your little TikTok influencers are not helping you. So, yeah.
I should have put this tweet in, but there was a tweet that I reposted earlier today. It's from, I have to see, at JL Montello, who said, actually I have to go back. Here we go. I beg Democrats to understand that treating good policies like student loan forgiveness as a lottery that only applies to a small fraction of the people who need help doesn't endear anyone. It just pisses them off and makes them feel policy is arbitrary and doesn't benefit them.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So, like, I think that was very well stated in terms of the incremental stuff that people usually just say, oh, that's good. You know, like at least something is getting done. But it's the idea of like, not everyone benefits, you know, or at least benefits in a way that they feel. Like, it's one thing. Look, people are selfish as fuck. Like, people want to know that their vote actually counted for something. And like collectively, if people were feeling different things of how their lives were improving, that's one thing. But you can't just say, oh, unemployment is down when people are working several jobs, minimum wage,
failing
in order to make ends meet.
You know, gas prices through the roof, like stuff that affects people day to day, like it has not been affected, you know? So of course people are going to turn to the other side and be like, "Will you help us?" You know? So yeah. But he's going to get to Sharon Zhang here, who I generally like a lot of times.
Yeah. So, however, as Sharon Zhang has pointed out, Monmouth reported that Biden's approval rating ticked up to 44% in July, only to plummet by 10 points over the next few months as inflation remained steady. What could explain the sudden drop? On issues ranging from fossil fuels to Israel's devastating war on Gaza, Biden appears to be abandoning young Democrats and voters to his left in hopes they will return in 2024 when the only other option is Trump. And we're seeing
Piper strategy again.
Right. Yeah. And we're seeing that people are not falling for that.
No. Well, if anything, they're falling for it. They're just falling the wrong way. You know, in the Biden admin's case. Like it's not a big enough threat to them anymore. So like okay. Like,
in the months since Biden's approval rating hit 44%, the president embraced the Israeli government's retaliatory war on Gaza, even as it devolved into the current humanitarian catastrophe that's horrifying much of the world and leaving the U.S. increasingly isolated on the international stage. While Biden has called for Israel to respect Palestinian rights and support a two-state solution, he has shown unwavering support for the Israeli government, despite the mass protests against its right-wing leaders in 2023 and the well-documented and violent systems of apartheid that preceded the current war. Biden regularly urges Israeli leaders to show restraint and protect civilians, but that has simply not happened in Gaza and broader Palestine. Most of Gaza is in ruins, and thanks to Israeli blockades, much of the now unhoused population faces starvation, thirst, and disease as the IDF laid siege to hospitals and reduced entire neighborhoods to rubble. While U.S. ally Israel suffered a bloody terror attack on October 7th that claimed 1,200 lives, Biden has put his name on a war that is devastating civilians like no other conflict in modern times. And we talked about that with Brett last week. Watch that clip. Reports of alleged war crimes by Israeli forces continue to pile up, and hundreds of civilians reportedly die in the conflict each day. Actions speak louder than words. Even as he criticized Israeli leaders for indiscriminate airstrikes that kill civilians, Biden has gone around Congress to deliver weapons to the Israeli military. Muslim Democrats are threatening to withhold votes from Biden for failing to support a sustainable ceasefire, as are countless voters who see the youth of Gaza pleading for help in TikTok videos. This could explain Trump's bump in recent head-to-head polls with Biden, with younger and Muslim voters registering their protests against the war on Gaza as the death toll surpasses 20,000. Indeed, opposition to the war on Gaza brought thousands of people out to marches and direct actions across the U.S. and the world. The president has also championed the war in Ukraine and secured billions of dollars in U.S. aid for the war against Russian invaders in the country's eastern regions. That conflict is entering its third year as a bloody virtual stalemate, with Russian President Vladimir Putin betting he'll get a better deal in negotiations if Trump replaces Biden in the White House.
What's there to negotiate? Like that's pretty much what Putin's going for. Like, I'm not negotiating. Like,
right.
You know. So we tried that. He did. He's actively proven he tried that. Like, that's the Russian invader bullshit too. Like, no talk about the bombing of the Donbass for 9 years. I don't know if it's these people don't know or that they know and think that it's fucking far left conspiracy nonsense to think that. You know? So, yeah. But
with 70% of likely voters telling pollsters that Biden is not focused enough on issues that affect their daily lives, it's likely they associate the president with these bloody conflicts that dominate the headlines, rather than the greener infrastructure promised by the Inflation Reduction Act and championed by Biden or the historic federal relief bills that aided the nation's recovery from the pandemic. Biden has 10 months to convince voters otherwise, or at the very least, that 4 more years of Trump would be much worse. Unfortunately, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza will not have abated by the time U.S. voters head to the polls in November. Even after the fighting stops, the death toll will continue to climb as displacement and disease claim the lives of civilians, and bodies are slowly recovered from under the rubble of apartment buildings. Such images of Palestinian suffering will haunt Biden whether or not he secures a second term in November.
Well,
yeah. So, go ahead.
Voting bad.
Democracy simply doesn't work.
This is the choices you're left with. So, if that's even choices, and third parties aren't much better right now. So, good luck to them. That's what I'm going to say. I think the pressure's working, but the pressure right now is election related, which
right.
I want to see that pressure continue even if the election is, over.
Well, no, I think regardless, just the numbers in Gaza are going up. And they will continue to go up indefinitely. So regardless if Biden or Trump ends up being president or whoever it would be,
we're fucked.
Israel is still going to be a major issue for the next few years.
Yeah.
And whoever is president is going to have to deal with that. I would imagine Biden will probably do something, not necessarily a ceasefire, but to do something to try and win the young and Arab vote in particular.
Yeah.
But I think at that point it would be, I don't know what it is, but I can't imagine Biden just being just blasé about it and not try something. Or at least in rhetoric, say something.
Somebody will tell him. I mean, the issue is that AIPAC lobby is just as connected to him as everything else. So he might try to find something else to try to stick Biden with, especially Ukraine stuff. He seemed to push him on that, but oh well.
I would be interested if Trump, because Trump hasn't really said anything about Israel yet, but as far as I know, but I would be interested to see if, actually, I would imagine neither one of them, well, I can't imagine wanting to have a debate with Trump. I can't imagine it. But if he did,
it's gonna be
I will
bad.
watch it just to see if Biden knocks him over, or Trump knocks him over anything regarding Israel. But I say that knowing that Trump is also a pawn for Israel too. But Trump doesn't give a shit. He will just say whatever that fits that will look good to him in the moment, even though he's shit himself. So, but yeah, I think it'll be very interesting over the next few months to see.
Over the next year, strap in. It's going to be a ride.
Right.
So,
right. But, and like I said, we generally don't report on stories like these, because the space is just saturated with this electoral stuff anyway. But, but given, obviously it is an election year, we're going to have to talk about it. And we are going to talk about it a little bit more. But as I said, I'd be more interested to see groundwork as a result of, a lot of these policies that Biden allegedly is doing, as Mike said on paper, how they failed for most people and how people will respond to that. So that's actually something that I'm more interested in, is how people are going to respond in kind in the fall when it's time to vote.
Let us know what you think. Put them in that comment section right there below. Hit the like and subscribe while you're scrolling that way. And just share. We appreciate any help we can get. We're heavily suppressed. Sharing the stream always helps. Get new people here. We're trying to get to 2K subscribers. We're almost there. So hit that button, help us out.